Hey there everyone! I'm going to teach you how to make this beautiful teapot sculpted cake. Now, you don't have to sculpt it out yourself if you are a little bit leery on sculpting. You can also use ball pans to get the form of the cake and then go from there. So either way is fine with me, but I am going to show you how to sculpt the cake to get it to a teapot shape. And then before that, I'm going to show you how to use a template in the Word document to get the size and the shape that you're looking for in the teapot. And then after that, after we sculpt the cake, we're going to cover it in fondant. In covering a teapot cake, I like to use Karma Massa Ticino fondant because it is a very smooth, soft, workable fondant, and it just comes out beautiful. And with a teapot, you want it to come out porcelain smooth. You don't want any elephant skin, you don't want any cracks, you don't want anything. You want it to be super porcelain smooth. Now, Karma Massa Ticino is a little pricey, so if you want to try it with something that's not quite so expensive, just make sure that the fondant you pick is a more softer fondant. I believe Fonderific is a soft fondant, but just check out a few different ones and see which one is soft. You want a very soft, workable fondant because you're going to need to be able to manipulate it around without causing cracks in elephant skin. Before we get to covering the cake in fondant, I'm going to show you how to make the spout and handle in gum paste. We need to do this ahead of time because it does need to dry for a couple of 2 to 3 days, I would say, to get it to be firm enough. And you will need toothpicks to place the items in the cake. And you'll also need some royal icing to be able to smooth it on and kind of act like a glue. And then I'm going to teach you how to make the lid to the teapot. And the final piece, I'm going to show you how to make pearls, and they're very simple. It's just a matter of patience in placing them on your cake. So why don't we get started on this lovely cake? Okay, so before we get started, we're going to need a template, a teapot template to use. I just Googled teapot and did the images, and I went through the images until I found one that I liked. So this is one that I have found that is a good template to use. I used this on a cake recently that I made, a larger cake. What you want to do, you want to save the template in a Word document. The reason why you want to save it in Word is because you can adjust the size of it. Save it in Word, and then when you go into Word, you can adjust it to the size you're looking for. So according to a typical 4-inch cake, we're right about on the money here because we're going to be making the top of it, the lid, separately. So it is approximately a 4-inch cake, and it's about the width that we're looking for. This is a little bit wider, but we're going to be structuring it to fit this teapot. So you just want to make sure that your printable template is the size that you're looking for. This is going to be a smaller cake, and I wanted to show you a smaller cake because if you don't feel comfortable sculpting, you can always use a ball pan. There are, I believe, I've seen 6-inch ball pans and 8-inch ball pans. I haven't seen any other sizes. So you can use ball pans, and then instead of doing a 3-layer like I did here, you just do the 2-layer and you just fill it in between. Once we get our cake sculpted and crumb coated and back in the refrigerator before we put fondant on it, we're going to make the handle and the spout. So we'll set that aside for a moment. Now I have here a 3-layer 6-inch cake, and the reason why I did 3 layers is because 2 layers is just not going to cut it. So the 3 layers will give me more room to sculpt away some of the cake. Now what I did, I created my 3 layers and I filled it. I did not level because when I'm sculpting things such as a teapot cake or something that needs a lot of sculpting, it really doesn't matter if you level it because you are going to be cutting a lot of that away. What's more important is that you let it settle. So I have filled this cake up with Swiss meringue buttercream, and then I let it settle in the refrigerator. You put it, what you do is after you wrap it with wrap, you put a small weight on top, and then you let it settle. And what that does is it helps pull out any air pockets that are inside the icing. All right, so then we're also, to show you, taking this piece off right here, this cake is on a 4-inch cake circle. And the reason why we're doing that is we're going to be tapering our cutting down. We're going to taper it down to the just the bottom piece, such as this. The bottom piece is tapered down. So I have it sitting on a 4-inch cake circle, and then another a 6-inch, or I'm sorry, an 8-inch cake circle, just to give it more support. Okay, so then once you get the template you're looking for, then we're going to cut it out. We're going to cut this piece out here so you can get a better idea of the sculpting that you want to do. And then we're going to leave this alone because we're going to put this underneath parchment paper. We're going to use gum paste to make the handle and the spout. So we're going to leave this alone and let that sit aside for a moment. And then we're just going to get a general size here, just an idea of what we're looking for. And I typically just kind of push it up against the cake. And you want to use a serrated knife, and then you want to put a baking sheet underneath your cake to collect all of the trimmings. So we're just going to start out. You can even make a little marking here just to get an idea, and an idea here. And then we're just going to start carving. This cake is chilled, so it makes it easier to carve. And you just want to go a little bit at a time. You don't want to take too much off at once. And you just go a little bit at a time, sculpting it. You don't want to cut off too much. And we're going to go over to the other side. You want to do a little bit on each side just so you have an idea of how much you're going to take off. And remember, we're tapering the bottom. Now, to get my tapered bottom, I will turn the cake upside down, and as you see, there's quite a bit around here. So we're just going to, on a very slight angle, just take pieces away. Okay, so now we have a slight taper on there, and we're going to clean up some of the trimmings before we move on. Okay, so then we're just going to round it out a little bit more. And the important thing is that it's fairly the same shape as your template. So we just look at it this way, and it looks pretty good. Okay, now after you have sculpted your cake out to where you think you'd like it, if you see some areas that you may have cut too much away, there's always a way to fix that. So there's a little divot area right here. So then we make a cake spackle. And what cake spackle is basically mixing some of the trimmings of the cake in with a little bit of buttercream. And what that does is it creates a spackle, basically, or kind of like a cake pop mixture. And then you use that and you fill it in, and that will help solidify the cake. And this is a cake decorating trick that a lot of professionals use, and it's a filler. It fills in areas that you may have cut away too much, or areas that just did not come out as smooth as you liked it. Now here's a little bit here. So you want to do this before you crumb coat, because you want it to get the shape that you want it to be in. And this basically, I mean, it's a filler. It helps fill in the cracks just like a spackle does on walls. Say you're cutting and you accidentally cut a piece off, or a piece falls off, then you just fill it in with cake spackle. Now this is a good time to check the levelness of your cake. So I have a little level that I use. I found this in the hardware store. I only use it for cakes. And I go around and I just check make sure that the cake is level. And if not, then this is the time that you want to trim away any areas. So it's slightly off here. I'm going to trim a little bit here. So you want to make sure you do this before you crumb coat the cake. Okay, now once you have it leveled, you want to pick up your template again where you have the spout and the handle, and you just want to kind of imagine where that spout and handle are going to be. Make sure that they are the proper size that you're looking for, and they look good. Okay, so I'm going to be moving on to giving this a crumb coat, and then we're going to put it in the refrigerator, and then once it hardens, then we are going to give it a final smooth before we put the fondant on. Okay, so while our cake is in the refrigerator chilling, what I'm going to do is make the spout and the handle, and I placed our template underneath a piece of parchment paper. And we're going to use the parchment paper as the area for it to dry. So we're going to make sure that we have a nice smooth gum paste. You want to give it a good conditioning. Sometimes I like to put it in the microwave for a few seconds, and it helps soften it and gives it a nice conditioned look. And it makes it more flexible to be able to use. Because when you're bending it, if your fondant's a little dry, you're going to have cracks at the bend, and you don't want that. So you want to make sure that your fondant's nice and smooth. And if you have to take any of it off, you can take some off. So you want a nice, actually I'm going to roll it over. You need a nice smooth log here. And you want to make sure you don't go too thin or too thick. Just a little bit longer. All right, now we have it rolled out, and then you just want to make sure it's nice and even. Okay, so we're going to get our handle. We're going to just bring it around, and you want to get it to where you want it. Shape it the way you want it. There's a little, you're going to have a little angle right here. So you want to make sure that you get this shaped properly. Bring this one down a little bit. And you want to do all the bending now before it dries out, because you don't want cracks in here. Just want to get it nice and even. We're going to break a toothpick in half, and we're going to put the pointed end facing outward, because that's the end that's going to stick in the cake. So we're going to put the pointed end there, and then now that you pushed it in, then you just want to get a little dab of edible glue and place it back in there. And then this way it'll hold it in. And then we're going to use the other toothpick for the top piece. And then push that in so you have it in a little bit. Bring it out, and then you can add some edible glue and push it back in again. And then this will, it's dry and secure it that way. Okay, so you have this piece here, and then we're going to work on the spout. Now with the spout, it's a little bit fatter here, and then it tapers up. Get the shape you're looking for. I'm going to cut some of this off here. And then the idea is to just get it to the shape you want. I'm going to taper it around a little bit more. And if you have to pull it off just to kind of see where you're at, that's perfectly fine. I'm going to bring this in a little bit more. Round it around a little bit more because it's going to be going around the cake. You want it to be able to fit pretty snugly at the cake. With the spout, it's going to be a little bit more difficult to hold it on. So we're going to put a toothpick here and a toothpick here, and then once we place it onto the cake, we're going to be using a support to help hold it in place until it dries in place. And then once you get it to the shape you want it in, you want to fix it up. Just round it out where you want to round it out. You don't want it to look flat. You want it to have a rounded look. Okay, so then we're going to get our toothpicks. We're going to make a hole here. And we're going to make a hole here. Then we're going to bring them back out again. Add a little bit of edible glue. And place it back in again. And then you can also make a ball tool, just a little indentation here to show that there's a opening there. So we're going to set this aside and let this dry for a couple of days while we work on the rest of the cake. Okay, so we have our chilled cake right here. It is crumb coated in Swiss meringue buttercream. I put it in the refrigerator, chilled it. I did a final smoothing out using Flexi Smoothers and hot water. I dipped the Flexi Smoother in the hot water and smoothed around and around and around until I got it to where I wanted it. Okay, so then now we're going to cover it in fondant. I measured out across to see how much fondant we're going to need, and we need about 17 inches around. It's a little bit more than what we need. However, I always like to roll out more than what we need, and then we can always adjust. Since this is a small cake, it's only a 6-inch cake, I'm able to just lift the fondant up and then place the cake underneath. And if it were a larger cake, what I would do, I would put it on a fondant roller and roll them up and then drape it. But we are not going to need to do that. I'm just going to bring this over, bring our cake in, and then you just want to make sure that you have enough all the way around. So we're going to start smoothing at the top and work our way down just like you would normally do for covering a cake in fondant. You always want to secure the top first, and then you just bring it out like a skirt. And I am using Karma Massa Ticino fondant. When you are making a teapot cake, you really want to make it porcelain smooth. So I find that that is the best fondant that works for me. It has a great workable time and has less chance of elephant skinning and cracking. And you just work your way around. You don't push it down. You just work your way around and just bring it in. Bring out your skirt, bring it in, bring out your skirt, bring it in. This is the beauty of fondant. It's very flexible. And as you see, we have quite a bit extra, which I like because I don't want to be short any fondant. All right. Now we can cut away the excess. And you want to get that excess back in the container, airtight, so it does not dry out. Okay, so now we're going to pick it up and place it on our turntable. And we just want to get it nice and smooth. And I start out smoothing with a regular fondant smoother. And then I'll work over to the Flexi Smoothers. Now before I work over to the Flexi Smoother, what I'm going to do is turn it upside down. And we're going to take this piece off here. And then we are going to make sure that we are adhered at the bottom. So we want to make sure that this cake is covered. So we're going to pull up. We're going to gently pull the fondant, stretch it up. You want to get the cake as covered as possible so it does not dry out. Okay, now that we have the bottom piece flattened out and it's all covered, we're going to put a fresh cake board over it. And then you're going to slide it and flip it over. Okay, then we're going to smooth this out again. And here's another time where you want to check to make sure your cake is even and level, and we're good. Now that we used our fondant smoother to smooth it out, we're going to do extra smoothing here because a teapot cake, you want it to be super smooth. So I'm going to pull out, starting out with one of my flexible, very flexible Flexi Smoothers. And I'm just going to go around. And this helps really, really smooth it out. I mean, I like these teapot cakes to be porcelain smooth. So you just go around and you get it as smooth as you possibly can. You don't want any bumps or any ridges. And you just keep going around and smoothing until you're satisfied. And then I will get the next level of smoothness. This is a little bit firmer. It's not quite as flexible. And I go around and I smooth it even more. And because it's not as flexible, it does put more pressure on it, so it does give it a final smoothing. Okay, so this cake is porcelain smooth, and next we're going to be making a lid for this. Now for the lid, we're basically making a cake pop in the shape of a lid. So we're going to use our leftover trimmings. We're going to add some buttercream to it, and we're going to make a little cake pop out of it. And then you just want to kind of shape it into a disc. Now don't worry about putting the top piece on, as you see here. We're going to put a fondant ball here, so you don't need to worry about that. We're just shaping the lid itself. Okay, so we have a decent shape for what we're looking for. And if you want, you can hold it up to your cake. Be careful you don't touch the cake so you don't get it all, the cake all messed up. So it's going to be approximately just about like that. That's perfect. All right, so we're just going to form this nicely. Okay, so I'm going to get a small cake circle, put it on there, and then we're going to put this in the refrigerator and let it firm up. Once it firms up, we're going to cover this in fondant, and then we are going to start putting everything together. Now that we have all of our components finished, we have our super smooth cake that is in the shape of a teapot. We have our lid, and this is basically a cake pop, which is covered in fondant, and it is smooth, super smoothed out. Now, you can, if you would like, to put some buttercream underneath this, but you don't have to. It's basically a cake pop, just in the shape of a dome. I just used my Flexi Smoothers to smooth it out really, really nice. And then on top of the lid, we have our little circle piece that goes at the top. And then we have our spout and our handle. We're going to put all these components together now, and I'm going to use royal icing to put them together. So you want to get some royal icing and just something to be able to adjust it and put it on. All right, so let's start out. Let's put this aside a second. Okay, so we're going to put the lid piece on top of our lid here. So we'll get some royal icing. And royal icing dries pretty quickly, so you don't have to worry about it taking so long to dry. So we're going to add that piece on there. And then we're going to detach our lid from the cake circle. And you can see underneath it is a cake pop. And then we're just going to add some royal icing to the center of our teapot. Make sure we put the lid back on because royal icing dries out very quickly. And then you can just make sure that you form the bottom again. And you place your lid on top of the teapot. Okay, so let's bring our teapot in closer, and we will add our other two components. So what I would like you to do here at this point is go around and find the two spots that you want the spout and the handle. So I'm going to place my handle. Let me see. I believe these two spots will work well. So we're going to place the handle in, and we have that in. Now we bring it back out because we're going to put some royal icing in that area so it'll attach well. Okay, you just want to make sure you don't put too much there so it'll be seeping out the sides. All right, so we're going to put our handle in those same areas that we did before, and you may have to hold it in place. So royal icing dries pretty quickly. So you have your handle in place, and you can hold it in for just a few minutes just to keep it locked in. And then we're going to do the handle the same way, the spout. We're going to do the spout the same way. And the spout we can add, since this whole thing is going to be flush up against the cake, we can add some royal icing in this area. And then you want to eyeball it and figure out where you want your spout to be, and just kind of look overhead too to make sure that the handle and the spout are aligning. You just make sure that they are aligning in the same area, and then you place your spout in, and make sure you hold it in place. You have a teapot cake. And you just hold it in place. This is a small cake. This is a 6-inch. If you were doing a larger cake, your spout and your handle are going to be a little bit heavier. So you may need to put something up against it. Say this is a little too tall, but you may need to put something like this to hold it in place, to keep it in the same spot before it dries. So it actually holds it in place. And then you can get the skinny end of your tool and just blend in the royal icing. Now in these spots where you're using royal icing, you can also use gunge. I would not use edible glue because it's not strong enough. Gunge is basically using fondant or gum paste, a small piece of it, and mixing it with a little bit of water, just enough to make a paste. You want it to be toothpaste consistency. It works so well in holding pieces together. So we have those two pieces. Now to help decorate it a little bit, I like to add pearls to it. You can use your imagination and do whatever you'd like. And I'm not going to do the whole thing in pearls. I'll just show you how to do that and how you can drape them in there. So I have here a pearl mold. There are many on the market. This is a Karen Davis one. Okay, we're going to set this aside for a moment. And I'm going to show you how to make the pearls. Very, very simple. I use cornstarch to get it started. And let's bring this down a little bit more so you can see. And then I just roll out a soft piece of modified fondant. I usually put it in the microwave for a few seconds to soften it because it makes it a lot easier to work with when you're working with molds. And I just bring it in to the mold. Tear this piece off here. And I just make sure that the whole mold is filled with the modified fondant. And then I use a scraper tool and I just scrape off the excess. You want to be careful that you don't scrape too much because then the pearls will come out and not be ready to come out. You want them to be attached to make it easier for you. Okay, let's get this excess fondant, place it in a bag. I try to put away the excess fondant as soon as possible so it doesn't dry out. Then we just manipulate the fondant to fit in the mold. And you want to make sure you don't have any pieces sticking out, such as over here. This will make a sloppy set of pearls. I'm a big stickler on making sure that all the excess is taken away. So you want a very clean piece. Okay, now sometimes it will come out right away and sometimes I have to put it in the freezer for 5 to 10 minutes. So let's see which direction that's going to go in. And I can always tell, and it looks like it's going to be stuck in there. So I'm going to put this in the freezer. Okay, so while our pearls are in the freezer, I want to talk to you about coloring, the final steps. Now, the gum paste and the fondant are slightly off in color. This is more of an off-white color, and this is a pure white color. Now, in the photo that you see here, for my last teapot cake that I made, I colored the spout, the handle, and the lid in gold. And I also added some flowers around here, some mini rose imprints. And I used a rose mold for this, and It just makes a pretty impression. So I made a bunch of these roses and I colored them first. I colored them in gold first, and then I placed them all around the top. And it just gives some added character to the teapot. And you can do whatever you'd like to decorate your teapot because it's your teapot or your customer's teapot. If you don't want to paint these gold, you can easily paint, you can paint them any color you want, or you could just color dust them. Now I have here some antique silk color. So I'm going to color dust my teapot cake in antique silk. So I'm just putting antique silk all around it. And what this will do also is blend in the two different shades of white color. It'll help blend in the spout and handle color to the actual cake color. So you don't have a shade difference in white. It gives it some shine and it just really gives it a nice shimmer. Just put a little bit. I would put not quite as much on the handle and spout as you do on the cake itself because you want the cake to become a little bit darker than it is, so it'll match up with the spout and handle better. Okay, let's go check out those pearls. We have some pearls that are ready. So you have to be careful with the pearls so they don't come apart on you. And typically I'll add a little luster dust on them before I get started. So what I like to do is turn them over very gently and place some edible glue on the back. And then you pick them up very gently and place them where you'd like them. Now what I would like to do, I'm going to place a string of pearls going from down here and continuing around. And you can also do a second set and bring it around. So you just place them on and then you go back to your mold and you make more. And you just keep making them until you have enough pearls that you would like. I would not make too many ahead of time because they will get a little hard pretty quickly, and you want them to be flexible enough to be able to place them where you want them. So folks, that is it. That is your teapot cake. Thank you so much for watching this training. It is a beautiful sculpted cake. You can use this for so many different event types. And there are so many different ways that you can change up the patterns, make it your own. If you enjoyed this video, follow me over on Instagram at Patty_Defandi. Have a great day.